And will officially move our embassy to Jerusalem as soon as the State Department can find some land.
He did it. He delivered on that campaign promise, unlike those other past presidents did. Benjamin Netanyahu is praising him for this. Other world leaders, maybe not so much, worried about this peace process and how that will affect it.
Not even you can't understate the historical significance of what he did. The courage that it takes to stand up alone and say, previous presidents promised it, I'm going to do it, but also understanding the ramifications internationally of how other countries, Arab nations will respond. But it is, as he stated over and over again, this is what we said we would do.
Right.
This is the right thing to do. This is the historic capital of Israel. Jerusalem may be divided right now, but it is the undivided capital of the Jewish people. He made the full-throated case for America's support for Israel. It was Harry Truman 70 years ago that declared the Israeli state first. He followed through on that commitment yesterday.
Well, a little more than 20 years ago, Nancy Pelosi actually signed it. She was on board with the Jerusalem Embassy Act. Yesterday, she was against it, as were many members of the global world community, because they think the president is breaking a promise to look for peace in the Middle East. Although, how's that been going lately? Not so well. Watch this.
The other major news tonight, President Trump reversing nearly 7 decades of U.S. policy, now recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
He had promised this day would come, but to hear these words from the White House was jaw-dropping. Not only signing a proclamation reversing nearly 70 years of U.S. policy, but starting plans to move the embassy to Jerusalem. No one else on earth has an embassy there.
The department is concerned about any possible violent reaction to President Trump's announcement today.
President here is making a risky bet that doing something different will eventually end up productive for peace talks. But he's about the only one making that bet. 7 decades of U.S. policy changed in an instant.
You know what's extraordinary is President Trump now is the first president who is being attacked for keeping a promise.
That's right. That's his only sin. The Congress has passed it.
Yeah.
Presidents have declared it. It's been our official policy. His sin is, I'm going to actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Nikki Haley said, this is not risky. This takes courage. And she said it's nothing more than recognition of reality. Listen.
Let's be clear. Let's do a reality check. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. So we're acknowledging something that's common sense to everyone. The parliament's there, the prime minister's there, the Supreme Court's there. That is the capital. And by us putting the embassy there, that's a U.S. decision. Having said that, courage doesn't come by doing what everybody else says. Courage does by what you know is right. This is the right thing to do. And what the president's doing is he's showing leadership. And will there be those that have negative feelings about what we're doing? Yes, of course. But could this possibly lead to a peace process? Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's try something new when the old stuff hasn't worked.
That's right. President Clinton said he would do it. President Bush, 43, said he would do it.
President Obama?
Even Obama.
They all said they'd do it.
All right, we also want to talk about the FBI this morning because there's some major news developing this morning as well. The DOJ is finally combing through all those text messages that Peter Strzok sent to his alleged mistress, Lisa Page. He was the top FBI agent investigating the Russia collusion case and also investigating Hillary Clinton's email. We all are asking, what did Mueller know? What did his boss know?
And when did he know it?
Because apparently he was demoted. Peter Strzok was demoted in July. So all these months have gone by, and we're just finding out about his demotion through leaks.
That's right. So Chris Wray is going to be in the hot seat. He's the FBI director right now. And people want to know exactly, it looks to many as if there's a political bias at the head of the FBI with the senior management there. When you look at these 10,000 email exchanged by Peter Strzok, who is one of the lead investigators on all sorts of things like Russia and Hillary Clinton.
Has been and almost currently was.
To his girlfriend, who was a lawyer on the special counsel. You wonder what is going on there.
It was anti-Trump text messages and pro-Hillary text messages. And I read an article about some of the congressmen are saying, how can you put someone who's in her fan club as the head of the investigation?
Well, or the deputy to Bob Mueller, who we know now is a top donor to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And listen, everyone in the FBI is free to have their own political affiliation.
Sure.
But if that
long as it
clouds your
doesn't
judgment
affect.
in an investigation, that becomes problematic, and we have evidence of that.
Well, one of the top guys who had been there during the Obama years and appeared to be a supporter of Hillary, because after all, his wife did run for Congress out of Virginia, is Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe was the deputy assistant director of the FBI for a while. Now, according to John Solomon at The Hill, he has been told, Ron DeSantis, the congressman from the great state of Florida, was told by a retired FBI supervisor that Andrew McCabe, that guy right there, there's Mr. DeSantis, Andrew McCabe told him not to call Benghazi attack terrorism when giving FBI findings to the intelligence community, even though they had already connected the dots. They knew that al-Qaeda had directed the attack, and after the President of the United States had been told it. And so now it just looks like there is a political bias throughout the top
Changing the
management
language,
of
continuing
the
to change
FBI.
the language.
And remember when the Benghazi attack happened? Right before the 2012 elections. This was about changing the narrative to make sure that it didn't look like we'd
That President
lost.
Obama was reelected.
Yeah, that
Right.
the situation wasn't out of control in
Right.
Libya. They want to keep the lid on it, change the language so that nothing to see here, people, everything is fine.
But it was one thing to have Susan Rice, who was the national security advisor, who worked in the White House, go out and say it was all based on a video because she was essentially a political animal. It's completely different to have
Great
senior
point.
management at the FBI do exactly the
Yes.
same thing.
Yep.
All right, let us know what you think, friends at foxnews.com. In the meantime, we're going to hand it over to Jillian, who has some headlines for us.
Good
Hello.
Thursday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's begin with your headlines right now on a Fox News alert. Several major wildfires now burning in Southern California. Just look at that video. The latest sparking near the Bel Air neighborhood of Los Angeles, prompting thousands to evacuate. And both sides of the busiest highway in America, the 405 freeway, are on fire. Gosh, that is scary. It could even get worse today as forecasters predict hurricane force winds. We're talking like 80 miles per hour. And on top of that, there is no rain in the forecast for the next week. We'll be live on the ground in Southern California at the bottom of the hour. A Fox News alert, it's just a matter of time. North Korea threatening war with the U.S. overnight. The chilling warning coming after a U.S. supersonic bomber flew over South Korea yesterday in a show of force as part of a large week-long military exercise. And we now know there were supposed to be 2 bombers in the air. The second one was grounded after experiencing a maintenance issue while taxiing for takeoff. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers stepping outside to watch the Capitol's Christmas tree light up in the night sky. Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, sharing the true meaning of Christmas during the ceremony.
When the angels appeared in the night sky to herald the birth of a Savior, amid our cares and troubles, we gather to see for ourselves that the light overcomes the darkness.
This year's tree came from Montana. An 11-year-old boy hailing from the state had the honor of flipping the switch and lighting it up. That's a look at your headlines. I'll send it back to you guys.
'Tis the season.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much.
Well, it is the question that everyone wants an answer to. How is a 5-time deported illegal immigrant acquitted of Kate Steinle's murder? A juror just broke his silence, and that is coming up.
That'll be interesting to see. And liberals still scratching their heads over how Trump won the White House. Still scratching. Our next guest says this is why.
They failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering.
Eric Erickson explains a great column yesterday. Stick around. He's got the answer.
We finally acknowledge the obvious, that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. I am also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. While previous presidents have made this a major campaign promise, they failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering.
He did indeed. Yesterday, President Trump making good on a campaign promise, declaring Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and beginning the process to move the embassy there from Tel Aviv as soon as the State Department can find some land. Our next guest argues actions like that one, the reason why President Trump is in the White House. Here to explain, Fox News contributor Eric Erickson. Good morning to you, Eric.
Good morning.
Okay. So the headline in your op-ed on FoxNews.com, Jerusalem is why Trump's in the White House. What are you talking about?
Well, President Trump is making the most grievous sin a politician can make in Washington. He's actually doing what all the politicians in Washington say they want to do when they know they don't have to. He's taking them at their word. I mean, just like he took Republicans at their word that they wanted to repeal Obamacare when they probably really didn't. He's moving the capital, recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which, by the way, it already is. He's just recognizing reality. When every major politician, every presidential candidate, both parties of Congress in their platform documents, and a bipartisan resolution of Congress all declared that we should do exactly what he did. And now that he's done it, they're all like, oh, gosh, he can't do that.
And in fact, Nancy Pelosi, who was just a member of Congress back in the mid-90s, she voted for this, and now she's against it. What's up with that?
Right. Look, this is just Washington hypocrisy. These politicians do things and they go fundraise on them and say, I support this, knowing that it's never going to happen. Well, now it is. By the way, it's really rich to watch these Democrats who said we've got to change our Cuba policy because it wasn't working for so long, suddenly say, oh, we can't change this policy in Israel that hasn't been working to something that might actually work.
Right. Well, his critics, President Trump's critics say, you know, he ruined the Mideast peace process. Really?
What peace
Which process? Exactly.
Right. Listen, in Washington, there's this little game where they turn a blind eye to all the violence happening in Israel, all the rockets launched by Palestinian activists, until Israel does something. Then suddenly they do this, both sides are to blame. Both sides are not to blame for this stuff, and at least we finally have a president willing to say that both sides aren't to blame here. One side is a Western democracy that we should be supporting.
I got to read the last line of your column. It says the reaction of Washington's elite will only prove to Americans that the voters were right all along about the liars inside the Beltway. And that, in turn, will probably help reelect the president in 2020. If you want to read it, go to foxnews.com. Eric Erickson, always a pleasure.
Thanks very much.
All right. What do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. Meanwhile, it's a boy, it's a girl, it's an X. That soon could be an option on birth certificates. We're going to tell you that story.
Here's some quick headlines for you. Los Angeles is set to become the largest U.S. city to legalize recreational marijuana. After months of debate, the city council voting to license sales starting next year. You have to be 21 years old to smoke the marijuana, and you can only possess up to an ounce at a time. Medical marijuana has been legal in that state for 2 decades now. And it's a boy, it's a girl, or it's X. Washington state considering a third gender option on birth certificates. Right now, state officials looking for public comments on the proposal. If it's approved, parents can skip labeling their newborn child as a male or a female starting next year. Oregon and California, believe it or not, have already passed similar laws. Pete?
Well, Wisconsin could soon become the first state to drug test food stamp applicants. The state's lieutenant governor said this about the plan on Fox and Friends yesterday.
This is a means to an end, and the end is the dignity of work and an opportunity to climb the ladder to your own American dream. We just need more people with talent who are clean, who can go into our workforce.
Well, those who fail the drug test would receive treatment if they couldn't afford it. Shouldn't this plan be a no-brainer? Here to debate it is Democratic strategist Taryn Rosenkrantz and Republican strategist Chris Prudhomme. Taryn, I will start with you. So to a lot of our viewers, it's going to make common sense. If you want to receive support from the government, let's make sure you're clean in doing so. Where does that logic go wrong?
Sure. And I'm going to take the moral argument out of it for a second about protecting the most vulnerable in our country and in that state. And just look at the example of what Wisconsin is actually doing. So self-admitted by the governor, there's about 0.03, that's less than 0.5% of people they expect to test positive. That means this is not a widespread problem. It's not rampant. The state, just so you know, so the state of Wisconsin has actually had terrible budget shortfalls and shortages, and they're having all kinds of issues. So to spend like scarce resources on less than 0.5%, which isn't a rampant problem, it's actually not going to encourage the jobs and more drug-free workers in the workplace. it's really not going to have much of an impact at all, but it is going to take much needed resources away from prevention programs, job trainings, education. The schools are already having budget shortfalls there. I mean, what we really care about is educating our children and making sure our families have what they need. Aside, like I said, the moral argument that this is a safety net for the most vulnerable.
Well, Chris,
so, keeping all of that in mind, I don't think it's a no-brainer at all.
Well, Chris, I mean, taxpayers matter as well. I'll put up a statistic here. The amount of food stamp enrollees in Wisconsin, 670,000 of a population of almost 6 million. So even if it's a 0.03%, whatever percentage it is it not make sense for the government to do their due diligence and make sure if they're giving out taxpayer dollars, they're giving it to people who will use it responsibly?
Absolutely, Pete. Look, one is too much. $1 is too much. One person is too much. We have to start cutting down on wasteful spending. And look, Governor Walker is absolutely right. It is not unconstitutional to go get a job, to take care of yourself. Welfare is not designed for you to stay on top of and to be a crutch. There are people who are career welfare recipients. We have to stop that. It's time to stop enabling people to be on the welfare system. This is not a plan to target the low income. This is a plan to target what's wrong. And what is wrong is being on welfare, is doing drugs. And that 0.3%, I'm certainly sure there are many other individuals who may do low-level drugs or other things. This is about a much bigger picture.
Taryn, I mean, you can't be on drugs and be in the military. Why should you be able to be on drugs and receive my taxpayer dollars? And this program provides for follow-up treatment for those who are testing positive. So is this not a way for government to evaluate efficiency in their services, but also take care of people who are addicted?
Well, the part that no one's mentioning is that this has been deemed unconstitutional. So I know you said that it has been deemed unconstitutional, not for the reasons you said, which are, everyone would agree with that you certainly don't. But why it's unconstitutional is that it's been deemed that way for an unlawful search. So if we're looking at this just from the law of the land, which we all like to uphold the Constitution, right? We all want to uphold the Constitution.
Which is the drug testing aspect.
But the Trump administration has not acted on that yet. So right now, this is Governor Walker acting alone with scarce budget resources, focusing on something that's not going to be helpful. I agree with you that welfare reform, and I think the Democrats in Wisconsin agree that welfare reform is something that we want to look at. But more importantly, we want to look at how we can prevent drugs in the first place. And that's after school programs, education and job training in the workforce.
Very briefly, Chris.
But we also don't need to be enablers of people. And look, this is certainly it was a federal approval. This is why the governor put a new piece of the policy in place, which is this aspect of it to actually drug test. That was not originally in it before the federal appeal.
Not the first time that Governor Scott Walker has stood alone, beating recalls and others. Taryn and Chris, thanks for the debate this morning. We appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, well, back to a Fox News alert. Unbelievable and stunning images out of California as those wildfires intensify. Take a look at those. Now scorching 90,000 acres, and authorities saying the worst is still yet to come. Worse than that you're looking at right now. We're live on the ground. Plus, President Trump's decision to move the embassy, the U.S. embassy, to Jerusalem, not sitting well with all of our allies, including UK Prime Minister Theresa May.
This officer is overcome with the heat.
He is indeed. This is a Fox News alert. Out of control wildfires. Look at that, carving a path of destruction in Southern California.
Apocalyptic scenes playing out in one of Los Angeles' most exclusive neighborhoods. The furious flames spreading by the minute. But the worst, they say, may yet be to come.
Jonathan Hunt is live on the ground from Santa Paula with more for us. Jonathan?
Ainsley and Pete, good morning to you. We've been on the front lines of the fire, the Thomas fire, the worst of those burning in Southern California all night. Take a look at some of the video we've just fed into you from our cameraman Keith Rayleigh. Up close on the fire lines with firefighters battling in an extraordinary fashion to prevent the forward progress of flames towards the small city of Santa Paula. They appear to have been successful so far here, but there is a long 24 hours ahead ahead with the Santa Ana winds due to kick up even more and fan the flames. And as you were mentioning, another of the dramatic and frightening fires took place in the exclusive neighborhood of Bel Air in Los Angeles over the past 24 hours. 4 expensive homes burned there. It caused some chaos for commuters along the 405 freeway, one of the busiest in LA. And as I say, 24 hours of intense winds and intense battles ahead for firefighters. Pete and Ainsley, back to you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Powerful stuff.
It sounds like there's a possibility there could be hurricane force winds, 80-mile-per-hour winds.
Spreading the
today.
flames even more. Let's bring in Steve Hilton. You see him here on the couch. He was director of strategy to former British Prime Minister David Cameron and now hosts The Next Revolution from California. He's here, obviously, in New York. But is this affecting you? This is close to the Bureau where you go.
Well, we were just discussing it. Literally minutes from where our show comes from. You've been there, Pete. You know, it's so shocking when you see these events so close to where you live and work. Earlier in the year, just a few weeks ago, we had a similar experience up in Northern California, where I live with my family, and we'd go out in the mornings. Thankfully, we weren't affected directly, but you could literally smell the smoke from the wildfires in the Northern Bay Area.
You just
it's
worked
so
your
shocking.
whole life to build your home, and
Yes,
then
it's so awful.
1 second
It's so awful to see this. And also, every single time, I just think of the firefighters, the incredible work that they do to keep people safe and try and protect them.
Indeed. Steve, you work for David Cameron. The United Kingdom Prime Minister Theresa May does not have kind words for President Trump when yesterday he declared that Jerusalem is the capital, the eternal capital of Israel, and we're going to move our embassy there.
So when you talk about kind words, the specific word that she used was unhelpful. And that word took me right back to my time working in 10 Downing Street, because that's exactly the kind of sort of bureaucratic language that these politicians come out with. It's why Donald Trump got elected. Unhelpful. Hang on a second. How helpful, by the way, has she been? Has all the other people who've been critical of this decision, President Macron of France, the EU, they're all condemning it.
Why is it unhelpful?
But hang on a second. How helpful have they been? What have they done? How successful has the status quo policy on Middle East peace been? All these people who are criticizing this move, they're defending a failed policy for years.
Is this why you moved to America?
Basically, we were just talking about it. I'm so happy to be here, and it's so good to see. You know, this is actually, it's so true. This decision of the president's is just like all the others, like on Paris, the climate accords, on so many other things, where he does something that is different to the status quo, to the way things have been done. And then everyone around the world says, look at that, it's the absence of leadership, it's America, not it's the opposite. That is real leadership, to challenge the status quo and move things in a different direction.
Israel is a democracy. It's a capitalist country that's contributed great things to this world. Why is the Western world rejecting the idea that we would acknowledge their capital?
I think because there's this groupthink. It's a word Tucker Carlson uses all the time on his show. It's so true here. There's groupthink that affects the politicians, the diplomats, the bureaucrats, the people in the EU and the UN, and the way that things have been run. They all think the same way, and they have their cozy way of doing things. And when it's disrupted, they can't cope.
It's true.
Steve, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you,
Good
Steve.
to be here.
Thanks.
All right, we'll be watching your show this weekend.
9 p.m. on the Fox News channel.
Look at that. He was able to work that
There you
plug
are.
in.
Exactly. I know what I'm doing now.
Live from California.
All right.
Steve, right behind you is Jillian. We're going to hand it over to Jillian. She has some headlines for us.
Hi, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Morning. And the other.
I got nothing. All right, I tried. Good morning to you at home. Let's start with this. Congressman Al Green's attempt to impeach President Trump failing miserably.
Donald John Trump, by causing such harm to the society of the United States, is unfit to be president and warrants impeachment.
The House Democrats' articles of impeachment did not allege President Trump committed any crime, instead argued that he is a disgrace to the presidency, but it failed in a 364-58 vote. Top Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, tried to stop Green's attempt, saying now is not the time. An alternate juror speaking out days after an illegal immigrant is found not guilty in the death of Kate Steinle. That juror now reveals the fact that the killer had been deported 5 times was virtually ignored.
The crime was specified by the prosecutor. In this case, that was specified as brandishing of a weapon. At the end of the trial, right before the closing arguments, I think that was the first time that we'd heard the word brandishing during this 5-week trial. There's no evidence that the defendant did that. That made it a non-starter for the manslaughter charge.
In a controversial decision, a California jury acquitted Jose Enes Garcia Zarate of murder and manslaughter. Instead, the shooting in the sanctuary city of San Francisco painted as an accident. Zarate now faces federal weapons charges. A road rage incident turns violent when two men start firing at each other in the middle of the day. A news crew in Houston happened to be there and captured the frightening moments stemming from a fender bender. An innocent bystander was grazed by a bullet. An off-duty EMT coming to that woman's aid and applying pressure until medics arrived. Both suspects were taken into custody. One was rushed to the hospital. Frightening scene. So you may remember earlier this year when the USS Arizona survivor reached out to Fox News, pleading for the sailor who saved his life to be recognized.
Here he was. He saved 6 people's lives, and he didn't get anything. Somebody in Washington should have the guts and the honor to take care of that.
And now, 76 years later, on this Pearl Harbor Day, the Navy is delivering. Donald Stratton, who is one of the 5 USS Arizona survivors, says Petty Officer First Class Joseph George rescued him and his sailors during the Pearl Harbor attack. Following our report, the Navy tweeted that they will award George with a Bronze Star today. He retired in 1955, but passed away in 1996. That's a look at your headlines. Very deserving honor.
Amazing.
No kidding.
Yep.
You
What a
never,
story.
ever forget. Those moments, that moment on the USS Arizona, burned in his brain forever. He'll never forget that guy. The history will go on, memories will go on, but when someone pulls you out or saves you, you'll never forget. And for him to go all the way through and then to recognize him,
To
amazing.
save so many lives. And think about what happened as a result of that. Those 5 individuals that he saved went on to start their own families.
Great point.
Generation after generation saved because of that one individual.
Yeah. And he will be recognized by the Navy today, thanks to this
Posthumously,
program and
yeah.
others.
Wonderful.
So awesome stuff. Well, remember when liberals screamed at the sky like that over President Trump?
Yeah, we love this video.
It's great. A lot of tears. Their message for anyone daring to call them snowflakes, they say that's offensive.
Plus, House Republicans now demanding answers on whether Hillary Clinton received special treatment during her email investigation and whether a new investigation should be opened up. Judge Napolitano says skip that and go right to indictment.
Right to
Judge is here.
Doesn't mince words.
We have got some quick Thursday morning headlines for you right now. Before you head to the airport for the holidays and Christmas, the TSA is reminding you to leave your knives and guns at home. Just saying. In Florida alone, agents have found more than 400 people trying to bring guns onto planes just this year. If you're found with a firearm in your carry-on, you could be fined up to $13,000, so leave it at home. Meanwhile, Walmart is changing its name by dropping the hyphen and word stores from its legal name. The company says the move is a part of an effort to serve shoppers beyond physical stores such as online shopping. They want to compete with Amazon. The change goes into effect on February 1. Meanwhile,
today, FBI Director Christopher Wray is going to be testifying on Capitol Hill as GOP lawmakers demand answers for the alleged special treatment that was given to Hillary Clinton by the FBI.
Nobody should get special treatment, and nobody should be subjected to special bias. Each day we learn more information that reflects the double standard.
Why are there 2 different standards of justice? Special deals for special people is not the American way.
here to weigh in is Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, over the last week, we've heard so many instances of people at the senior level of the FBI. It looks like they have a political bias, and they went easy on Hillary Clinton.
Well, it does. They did go easy on Hillary Clinton, but remember, the FBI just gathered